When Emily Johnson didn't show up to class for the third day in a row, everyone assumed she had gone home for the weekend and forgotten to tell anyone. But by Monday, whispers spread across campus. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her dorm room was locked, lights off, and no one had seen her since Thursday night. I wasn't particularly close to Emily, but we shared a history seminar. Something about the way people avoided the subject unsettled me. By evening, curiosity gnawed at me. I decided to check her dorm room myself. The hall outside her room was unusually cold, the kind of chill that prickled the skin. The fluorescent lights hummed above, one of them flickering every few seconds. I knocked softly. No answer. I tried again, a sudden knock, echoing louder than I intended. The sound carried down the hall, and for a moment, I thought I heard movement inside. I bent closer to the door. A faint sound filtered through. Not footsteps, not voices. It was softer, like the creak of an old chair rocking slowly back and forth. My throat tightened. "Emily," I whispered. The creaking stopped. I should have left, but the RA's spare keys were easy to get. 10 minutes later, I was back, hand trembling as I turned the lock. The door opened with a long groan. The smell hit me first. Damp fabric, dust. And underneath it all, a faint metallic tang that reminded me of rust or blood. The room was dim, curtains drawn tight. My phone flashlight cut through the shadows. The desk was cluttered with open books and crumpled papers. On the wall above it, strange symbols had been drawn in thick black marker. Circles, jagged lines, shapes I didn't recognize. My stomach turned. A chill draft brushed my neck. Behind me, the door clicked shut on its own. The sound of whispering rose from the far corner, low and hurried, like several voices talking at once. None of them clear. I swung the flashlight beam toward the source. Nothing. Just Emily's bed. Sheets rumpled, as if someone had left in a hurry. Then the light caught something else, scratches etched deep into the wooden floor. They formed a circle, carved with shaking precision. At its center was a burned patch, blackened as though candles had been left too long. Wax dripped down the grooves. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around me, crawling into my ears. My skin broke into goose flesh. Suddenly, the sound of glass breaking behind me. I spun around. The mirror above Emily's dresser had cracked straight through, shards dropping onto the carpet. My reflection wavered in the fractured glass, distorted, eyes too wide. And then, faint but clear, came a woman's scream. It didn't come from outside or the hallway, it came from under the floor, muffled, like someone trapped beneath the room itself. My legs nearly gave out. I staggered backward, tripping over a chair. The creak of its wooden legs echoed like a gunshot. The whispers stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard something else. Loud footsteps in the hallway outside, slow and deliberate, moving closer, closer, until they stopped right at the door. My breath hitched. The knob began to turn. I bolted. I didn't think, I just ran. I shoved past the door, past the empty hallway, down the stairwell, 2 steps at a time. When I finally burst outside, the cold night air cut my lungs like glass. Campus police searched the room the next morning. They found nothing, no scratches, no symbols, no broken mirror. Just a tidy dorm, bed neatly made, desk stacked with untouched books. They told me I'd imagined it, that stress and rumors had gotten into my head. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And sometimes, late at night, when the dorm halls are quiet, I still hear it. The whispers in the dark, the creak of a chair, the muffled scream of someone trapped just beneath my feet. Emily was never found, and I don't think she ever left. When I moved into the old apartment building, the landlord pointed out the units with quick, casual gestures. Most tenants keep to themselves, he said. But when he reached the end of the hall, his voice dropped. That one number 6, don't bother. Man pays rent on time, never causes trouble. But nobody's ever seen him. At first, I thought it was a joke. A neighbor no one had seen. Impossible. Yet as days passed, I realized he wasn't lying. The door to number 6 was always shut tight. The brass numbers tarnished, the air around it faintly colder than the rest of the hall. One night, while carrying groceries up the stairs, I thought I heard movement from inside, a slow shuffle of footsteps dragging across the floor. Then, a sharp sound, like the creak of an old chair rocking back and forth. I stopped, listening. The noises went silent the moment I reached the door. Weeks went by. I never saw anyone enter or leave. But sometimes, late at night, I'd hear it, a faint muffled sound behind the wall we shared. Whispers in the dark, low and urgent, too faint to make out but enough to keep me awake. One stormy evening, the power flickered out across the building. I lit a candle and sat in the dim glow, listening to the rain pound the windows. That's when I heard it, a sudden knock on my door. 3 slow, deliberate raps. My skin crawled. I called out, "Who's there?" No answer. The hallway beyond was silent, but when I pressed my ear to the wood, I thought I heard breathing. I told myself it was nothing, probably a prank. But when I glanced at the peephole, I froze. Across the hall, the door to number 6 was slightly open. Just a crack, a thin slice of darkness. The next morning, the door was closed again. Days later, I came home late and found something strange. An envelope slid halfway under my door. Inside was a scrap of paper, yellowed and brittle, with words scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Don't listen when he calls." My stomach dropped. I checked the hall empty, silent, every door shut. That night, I tried to ignore it, but at 2:00 a.m., I woke to a sound. A man's distant scream, muffled but agonized, echoing through the pipes. My lights flickered, and the air grew icy cold. From the wall near my bed, the whispers started again, closer this time, clear enough to almost make out syllables. I pressed my palms to my ears. "Stop," I whispered. But the voices only grew louder, overlapping, frantic. Then the sound of glass breaking from somewhere inside my apartment. My heart leapt as I scrambled for the source. The mirror in my hallway had cracked down the center, shards littering the floor. And in that fractured glass, I saw something. Not my reflection. A figure standing in the open doorway of apartment 6, tall, gaunt, head tilted unnaturally to one side. Its mouth moved slowly, whispering words I couldn't hear. But its eyes were pale, clouded, fixed directly on me. I spun around. The hall was empty. The door to number 6 was closed tight. For hours, I sat frozen on the couch, lights blazing. At dawn, I convinced myself it had been a hallucination, a trick of the storm and my nerves. But then I noticed something. On my door, faint but unmistakable, were 3 long scratches carved into the wood, fresh, deep, as if someone or something had been trying to get in. No one has ever seen the neighbor in number 6, but every night since, I've heard him. The whispers, the creak of the chair, the slow footsteps pacing the hall. Sometimes, when I lie in bed, I feel hot breath against my ear. And last night, the door across the hall stood open wider than ever, darkness spilling out. I don't know what happens if I answer when he finally calls. I only know I'm running out of nights before I find out. The dorm bathroom was always unsettling at night. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, one flickering above the row of sinks, and the air reeked faintly of mold and bleach. Everyone avoided it after midnight, except me. My insomnia left me wandering the halls, toothbrush in hand, too restless to sleep. That night, the corridor outside was dead silent, unusually cold. My footsteps echoed against the tiles as I pushed open the heavy bathroom door. Inside, the mirrors along the wall reflected the dim light, pale and distorted. Steam clung stubbornly to the corners, even though no showers had been running. I set my toothbrush down, turned on the tap. The water sputtered, then steadied with a hiss. That's when I noticed something odd. In the mirror, I could see the whole row of stalls, showers behind me, the doorway at the far end. But something wasn't right. The stall doors looked slightly open in the reflection. In reality, when I turned to glance, they were all shut tight. I frowned, leaned closer to the mirror. That was when the sound started, a slow creak like an old door swinging on rusted hinges. I froze, staring at the reflection. One of the stalls in the mirror was opening, inch by inch. But behind me, the stalls remained closed. The air turned colder, enough for my breath to fog the glass. The smell of damp stone and something metallic, almost like iron, filled my nose. A drop of water hit the floor, echoing too loudly, though no faucets were leaking. I tried to back away, but my eyes stayed glued to the mirror. A shape emerged in the reflection. Tall, thin, its head bent forward unnaturally, dark hair hanging limp. It moved slowly, dragging its feet. In the glass, it stepped out from the stall, but when I whipped my head around, the tiled row behind me was empty. The sound of loud footsteps followed anyway, echoing on the bathroom floor. My throat went dry. "Who's there?" My voice cracked, sounding far too small. The figure in the mirror raised its head. Its face was pale, features blurred as though smeared by condensation, but its mouth was visible. It opened wide, impossibly wide, and though no sound came from its lips, the bathroom filled with whispers in the dark. They circled me, urgent, overlapping, so close it felt like they were inside my head. My toothbrush slipped from my shaking hand, clattering loudly against the sink. The sound jolted me. Yet the whispers didn't stop. I stumbled back, bumping into a stall door. The metal handle rattled beneath my hand then. Without warning, it slammed shut behind me. The mirror cracked. A sharp, splintering sound, like glass breaking, split the silence. A thin fracture ran through the reflection, distorting the figure until it looked even less human. And then came the scream. A man's scream, distant yet piercing, echoing from somewhere deep within the pipes or the walls. It rose higher, sharper, until my ears rang. I covered them with my hands, but the sound vibrated through my bones. The lights flickered violently. For a heartbeat, the mirror went black. When the fluorescent glow returned, the reflection showed something that shouldn't have been there. Me, but not me. My reflection stared back with hollow eyes, lips curled into a grin I wasn't making. Behind that twisted version of myself, the figure loomed, one hand resting on my reflection's shoulder as if it belonged there. I staggered toward the door, heart pounding. I yanked it open and fled into the hall. The whispers followed me until the door slammed shut behind. When I brought the ERA back minutes later, the bathroom looked perfectly normal. The mirror was whole. No cracks, no fog, no figure. My toothbrush was gone. Now, every time I pass the bathroom door at night, I hear the faint creak of a stall door, the drip of water, sometimes even the muffled echo of that scream. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I catch my reflection in the dark window across from my bed. It smiles when I don't. My name is Alex, and I live alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of an aging building at the edge of town. I work late nights at a diner, so I'm used to coming home when the world feels quiet and empty. Silence never really bothered me until last winter, when something happened that I still can't explain. It was a Tuesday night. I had gone to bed late, drifting off around 2:30 in the morning. The air outside was bitterly cold, and the old heater rattled as it tried to keep up. I remember waking suddenly, my eyes snapping open, though I didn't know why at first. The clock on my nightstand glowed red, 30A. Then I heard it. A sudden knock on the door. 3 slow raps, sharp and deliberate, echoing through the apartment. I lay frozen in bed, ears straining. No one visits me that late. My neighbors were mostly elderly, and the thought of someone coming by at 3 in the morning made my stomach tighten. I told myself it was probably a drunk who had the wrong door. But a minute later, the knocking came again, louder this time. The air in my apartment felt colder than it had minutes ago. I pulled on a sweatshirt and crept toward the door, each step making the floor creak louder than I remembered. The smell hit me then, a faint metallic tang, like rust or blood. My pulse quickened. I pressed my ear against the door. Nothing. Just silence. Gathering courage, I looked through the peephole. The hallway was... I let out a shaky breath, half laughing at myself. But then came the whispers. Whispers in the dark. They drifted from beneath the door, curling into the room like smoke. Dozens of voices, overlapping, urgent but unintelligible. My scalp prickled. I stumbled back, heart pounding in my chest. The heater cut out. The apartment dropped into a silence so complete I could hear my own pulse. And then came another sound, the creak of an old chair. Slow, rhythmic, back and forth. I didn't own a chair like that. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, but the screen wouldn't light up. No matter how many times I pressed the button, it stayed black. Then, from the hallway, the sound of loud footsteps. Heavy, deliberate pacing back and forth just outside my door. My chest felt tight, each breath shallow. "Who's there?" I called out, though my voice cracked. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over. But then, something slammed against the door so hard the picture frames on the wall rattled. I jumped back with a yell. The lights flickered, buzzing weakly, before stabilizing. And in that flicker of darkness, I thought I saw movement in the hallway through the peephole. I forced myself to look again. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was a figure standing across the hall. Too tall, its head bent at an unnatural angle. Its face was blurred, features smeared as though I were looking at it through water, but its eyes, dark, hollow pits, stared directly at me. I stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. The whispers grew louder, filling every corner of the apartment, pressing against my skull. Then came a man's scream, distant yet piercing, echoing from somewhere deep inside the building. I covered my ears, squeezed my eyes shut, and just like that, everything stopped. Silence. When I finally opened my eyes, the lights were steady. The heater hummed again. My phone lit up on the nightstand, showing the time, 3:04 a.m. The hallway was empty. I barely slept the rest of the night, lying awake, staring at the door. When morning came, I tried to convince myself it had been a dream. But when I left for work, I saw them 3 long scratches carved into the wood of my front door, deep and fresh, trailing downward as if something had clawed to get in. That was months ago. And every night since, when the clock strikes 3, I lie awake in bed, listening, waiting, because sooner or later, the knocking will return. My name is Michael, and I've lived in this apartment building for about a year now. It's nothing fancy peeling paint in the hallways, a cranky landlord, thin walls, but the rent is cheap and it's close to work. There's only one rule, repeated in bold on the lease and whispered by the other tenants: do not use the basement storage. I never thought much about it until one night when I made the mistake of going down there. It started because I couldn't sleep. The building was unnervingly quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Around midnight, I decided to dig out an old box of books I thought I'd left in the storage cage. I figured the rule about the basement was nothing more than the landlord trying to keep people from piling junk down there. The basement door groaned when I pulled it open. A draft of cold, stale air swept past me, carrying the faint scent of mold and rust. The stairwell light flickered, buzzing like a dying fly. My footsteps echoed as I made my way down. At the bottom, rows of metal cages lined the walls, most of them empty, their padlocks rusted shut. The air was damp, heavy. My breath fogged in front of me, even though it wasn't that cold upstairs. I was halfway down the row when I heard it, a sudden knock on the door at the top of the stairs, loud, sharp, echoing down the concrete walls. I froze, heart hammering. The basement door was shut. No one else should be here. The knock came again, slower this time. I called out, my voice trembling. "Hello? Who's there?" No answer. The air seemed to thicken. From somewhere deeper in the basement came another sound, the creak of an old chair, slow, rhythmic, back and forth. My skin crawled. I told myself it was just the building settling, but the smell in the air changed. Stronger now, metallic, like iron. My stomach turned as I pushed farther into the basement, desperate to grab my box and leave. That's when the whispers started. Whispers in the dark, soft, overlapping, coming from all directions. I couldn't make out the words, but they grew louder the closer I got to the end of the row. My flashlight beam shook in my hand as I pointed it ahead. At the very last storage cage, I stopped. Its lock was broken, hanging loose. The gate stood slightly open. Inside, a chair sat in the center of the small room. It rocked slowly, though there was no one sitting in it. The floor beneath it was stained dark, as if water or something thicker had seeped into the concrete. Suddenly, the sound of glass breaking behind me. I spun around, light darting across the cages. A shattered bulb dangled from its socket, sparking faintly. The whispers stopped. Silence pressed down on me like a weight. Then I heard it. Loud footsteps, heavy, deliberate, coming down the stairs I had just ascended. I panicked, darted behind one of the cages, crouching low. The air was icy now, each breath burning in my throat. From my hiding place, I saw the basement door creak open. A shadow stretched down the wall, too long, too distorted to belong to any normal person. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. My flashlight flickered, and for an instant, I saw something in the cage across from me. A figure tall, gaunt, head tilted unnaturally. Its eyes, nothing but black voids. I bit my tongue to keep from screaming. I bolted. I ran for the stairs, tripping over the cracked concrete. My shoulder slammed into the wall, pain shooting down my arm, but I didn't stop. I scrambled up the steps, 2 at a time, and shoved the basement door open. When I stumbled back into the hallway, gasping for breath, everything was still. Silent. Normal. The landlord found me sitting on the floor minutes later, trembling. He didn't look surprised, just sighed and said, "I told you. Don't go down there." That was 2 weeks ago. I haven't slept since. Every night, when the building grows quiet, I hear it. The creak of that chair, faint but steady, drifting up from beneath the floor, and sometimes, just before 3:00 a.m., I swear I hear it again. A sudden knock on my door.